Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our showcase. This is our 7th week in a row of presenting our forums, and today is going to be a bit of a cracker. So I'm going to kick off by introducing Kylie Clark from Greater Western Water. We invited her to do Acknowledgement of Country last year, and I found it really a really personal and moving experience. So we've asked her to do it again. So over to you, Kylie.
Great. Thank you very much for that, George. Good morning, everybody. Okay, today I would like to respectfully acknowledge all of the traditional custodians of this land upon which we meet today. Someone's just come to my front door. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Give me 1 second.
Well, these things happen. That's you tempt fate when you're doing things live, but Kylie will come back to us in just a moment. While she's doing that, I thought I would have a look online for some Aboriginal art because I wanted to pop in a picture, and I found this fabulous website which has got all of this Aboriginal artwork, and it's actually all for sale. And I found this one which I thought would be appropriate, Water Dreaming, seeing as how Kylie's from Greater Western Water. But over to you, Kylie.
I do apologise. You've got to love Australia Post timing, don't you? Okay, yeah. Let's start again.
They normally don't turn up.
Well, that is true. They're on time today. Okay. I would like to respectfully acknowledge all of the traditional custodians of this land upon which we meet today. I honour their ongoing connection to country and pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I have lived in Lara, being Wadawurrung country, for most of my life, growing up visiting the Yuyangs to play, hike and enjoy barbecues with family and friends. However, at that time, I didn't understand much about Aboriginal heritage. Working within the Water Corporation for 16 years, I am proud to say I have a greater understanding and appreciation of our lands and waterways. Attending smoking ceremonies, visiting the Barwon River, learning about artefacts and scar trees. I feel privileged to work for Greater Western Water in an environment that encourages all staff to acknowledge and be respectful of traditional owners, country and waterways for future generations. Thank you. Oh, I'm out of breath.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And it's always great to actually have a bit of a personal inclusion into these acknowledgements. It really makes a difference. So thank you again, Kylie.
You're welcome.
So moving on to some housekeeping. I would also like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Bullock tribe as a traditional custodians of the land on which the city of Whitehorse is located, where I'm meeting you from today. So right throughout our forums, we've had our professional learning that people can request from their related bodies, and we have 3 organisations that have acknowledged our forums. And as you can see, we've got the Geospatial Council of Australia, Surveyors Registration Board of Victoria, and the Land Surveyors Licensing Board of WA. So following this meeting, if you would like to get a certificate of attendance, just Natalie from our event management company, or the company that's managing our events, will reach out to you and she'll arrange for a certificate for you. Also, love to be able to see you. Thank you for everyone who has put their cameras on. Don't hesitate to keep your cameras on. It makes it for a more personal experience, but if you're also more comfortable leaving it off, that's okay. If you are dialing in on your phone, that's no problem. Please don't put us on hold if you're going to answer a call, because as much as we love the on-hold music, it sort of tends to overshadow everything else that's going on. Feel free to hang up and then dial back in. We'll be here and we'll let you back in. We will have live Q&A. What we mean by that is that throughout our forums, we encourage you to put in questions into the chat box, and Michael from our Michael Balfour, who'll be monitoring the chat box, will raise things, and you know, if I'm presenting, he'll mention that there's something in the chat that needs to be answered, or he'll raise it with our other presenters as well. Excuse me. We'll also use live polling, and you'll see this little head logo with the cogs whirring away. What that means is that there'll be a poll either at the start of that particular session, presentation, or at the end of the presentation. It usually pops up in the chat box. Michael, can you kick off the polls, please, if you haven't already? And you know, as now. Okay, great. So as a bit of a practice, there's a few polls that we've kicked up. So feel free to jot those in, get your practice to using our polls. Also, while we're doing that, there's a number of people that I really want to thank, and I really want to take this opportunity to do that. I'll just move on into my slides, and I'll do that in just a moment. So here's our agenda for today. We're really chock-a-blocks. We've got some fantastic presentations, and some of the presentations are not the normal presentations that we ask for or that we request and invite people to talk about. So looking forward to some of the breadth of the conversations that are going to occur. Now, I'm going to take you through, my presentation is going to take you through some of the polls and the snapshot of what was discussed. But as I mentioned, rather than wait until the end, there's a number of acknowledgements I want to make, and I want to acknowledge our team. And some of our team are on here. Phil Nelson, just wave your hand. Phil, Michael Balfour, who waved his hand before, aka Kelly Island, the tea picker, and also Zhao Wei, one of our interns. Zhao Wei, if you could just pop your yeah, there she goes, her digital hand. Also, just pop your video on just for a moment so we can see your smiling face. And Zhao Wei is one of our 3 interns that we have, who's working on learning about the specs and developing new specs. And behind the scenes, we have Natalie and Melissa, who have been supporting our communication and event management. And, you know, and a special thanks to Kim Hesse and Natalie from Venues to Events for managing our comms that you've been receiving and organising our speakers. So on that note, I'm going to move along. So we've been in, this has been pretty interesting because we've only been going for 4 years now, and as you know, as a result of one of the impacts of COVID, we went completely online, and completely uncertain as to what would happen. What we've been tracking is the registrations over the years, and in our first year we had fairly substantial number of registrations, as you can see, but during 2023 we've had a significant increase. So over the time, it's been very pleasing to see that potentially that we've been delivering what is needed and wanted. We've also been tracking our registrations by event, and again you can see the increase in registrations across all of the forums, and A-SPEC continues to be one of our most highly attended forums. We've also started asking people what their level of knowledge is, just to get a sense of what they think their knowledge is. Now, to qualify this, I don't know what their baseline is. So people who say they have basic knowledge may actually be quite masterful in delivering A-SPEC compliant data. But what is really pleasing is that we've got a broad cross section of people from beginners right through to some experts. We like to get a sense of the kind of audience, and in this particular snapshot, it was a very broad question. Where are you from? Are you? We weren't so specific that we said, are you an asset manager? Are you an engineer? Are you an architect? But I think that's what we'll do next year. We'll probably split this up into two polls to see the sector that you're from and also the discipline that you're from, just to get a sense of what our reach is becoming. What I do know from my own experience of the people from the organisations that contact us is that we have quite a breadth of disciplines that approach us, from project managers to architects to developers, consulting engineers, contractors, surveyors. And as you can see from that particular pie chart, the surveying community is the largest attendee number of attendees, and that's consistent with the kind of queries that I receive. This year, through the brainchild of Kelly Island, the real Kelly Island, not the stepping Kelly Island, she suggested that we invite people to speak. So we've always had speakers at our showcase, but this year we took the opportunity to invite people from our community to come on and share their experiences. And it was quite interesting because I spoke to Philip Nelson and I spoke to a number of people, and they said, oh, look, we don't really know what to talk about. And by the end of the conversation, they're saying, yes, we can talk about that. And what it came down to was we didn't necessarily want them to talk about the ins and outs of what A-SPEC is or how to apply it. Some of them did that, the more experienced ones. What we wanted was the experience of their experience. And what I mean by that is, what was it like for them being an advocate for A-SPEC and the challenges that they faced within their own organisation? And if we're going to promote a knowledge sharing community, then they're the kind of experiences that we wanted to hear about. So we covered many topics and provided some handy hints on how things were addressed, everything from engaging with internal and external stakeholders, how technology is often a distraction, not the solution, challenging the status quo. We had a great presentation from Milos Pelikan from Melbourne Water last week on how he challenges the status quo and how to future-proof. I even stepped in and did a presentation and delivered a case study on how to classify proposed assets of a future water treatment plant upgrade to be compliant with A-SPEC. But overwhelmingly, the message was communication is king. And as you can see from the ratings, we had the presentations were very well received. Now, there's a number of things that we covered across all of the forums. So the people that attended would have seen this in multiple times. So what we did was we tailored it to the particular specification that we were dealing with. But essentially, we covered these 4 areas. Now, why did we do that? Well, we were asked by a number of individuals and organisations if we were familiar with particular initiatives. So AS 5488, which is the Subsurface Utilities Information Standard that was developed back in 2013. And I can see Johan Nel, who I think was on the original technical committee reviewing it. I was also on that along with Gabby van Veek. So we looked at what the impact or the alignment of A-SPEC is to that. We also looked at VBIS, which is the Virtual Buildings Information System, which was established as a new standard in asset classification to adopt a consistent asset classification structure for buildings, for facilities management purposes, predominantly designed for commercial software providers, and funded by the Victorian government. So it was important to see how A-SPEC sat side by side. We then looked at BIM for Water, another initiative taken up by the Water Services Association of Australia, who signed an MOU with BIM for Water in the UK for management of asset data using Uniclass. And what they looked at was a water industry classification hierarchy, and a standardization group was formed. And it's also part of the UK BIM Alliance communities. And then Uniclass. Uniclass is an ISO certified and globally recognized consistent system recommended by the Victorian Digital Asset Strategy, or VDAS as affectionately known in Victoria. So for us, it was really important to have a look at where A-SPEC fits into all of these. Now, essentially, all of these initiatives are about classifications. They go down to a particular product level, and they don't have the specific level of detail and granularity that A-SPEC provides. So we're really happy that A-SPEC is essentially a companion specification to all of these approaches. Now, as you can see, here's some of the detail that we went through. So the AS5488 markings, where it impacted our specifications. We went into some level of detail to the extent that we showed a roadmap to comply in this instance with DSPEC. What we mean by that is the black, as in the type, you can see at the top, a value derived from AS5488. And you can see we changed it from 2013 to 2022. And then there's a number of fields in the orange sort of brownish colored area that shows, now, if you starting with the AS5488 classification, then to deliver a DSPEC compliant data set, then you need to look at the level of granularity to be provided. So we've done that. And as you can see, many of you may recall maybe driving down the road and you see these markings on the road. This isn't specific to Victoria, this is Australia-wide. So on the left is the guide to the markings, in the middle is what the marking looks like, and on the right is our interpretation of what needs to go. Now, when we've looked at the other national and international initiatives, and I apologize if this is a little bit smaller, but in this particular instance, we've looked at our W-SPEC, which is our water, our recycled and potable water specification system, and we've done a comparison with Uniclass codes, we've done a comparison with VBIS codes, because we wanted to get a sense of what the alignment is. So these now exist in all of our specifications. And here's an example of A-SPEC. And as you can see in this particular table that's referred to in the VBIS example column, the code is related to the type of feature based on its material. So at some point in time, there'll be endless number of codes. From an A-SPEC perspective, we store that as an attribute, and we wanted to see what the alignment was. And thanks to Philip Nelson, who studied both the Uniclass and the VBIS classification systems, we're able to develop these tables. We're always interested to see what people are doing. Sorry, I'm just putting in my location based on the current code, based on the current poll that's up there. So feel free to continue on with the polls that are in your chat box. Now, interestingly enough, 92% of our respondents who are at our forums have not been asked to use AS5488. So surprisingly, there's not much exposure in this space of asset data collection using AS5488. It's something we'll explore further, but we've got some theories around that. We also talked about the primary changes. Now, one of the key things around data governance is to be able to link one thing to another. So what we found was that there were some deficiencies in our tables around the uniqueness of the IDs. So there are, and also the linking of the assets to a particular project. So we made sure that each table now has two specific attributes. One is an area of works unique identifier, which is really a polygon surrounding the area that the work is being undertaken. So rather than attaching all of those attributes to each of the asset, it can now just be linked to the one attribute feature, AOW_ID. And then we made sure that every table also has a unique identifier. In looking through our sample data, which is being prepared by Michael Balfour at the moment, what we came up with was another way to present some of the changes. So this isn't the detail. The detail can be found in each specification, but we have available in a spreadsheet form for all of the specifications, the changes to each of the asset types. So we've got the specification on the left. I'm showing you the A-SPEC one. We've got the layer name, which is the asset class, and then whether it's a new field, a new layer or not, and then what the particular change is. So we'll show changes as in additional fields or fields that have been removed. And so we made this available to everybody during the forums. If you're new to our showcase and it's something that you'd like to receive, just put your name into the chat and just say spreadsheet, please. We're always interested in what people think will make a difference to them. So we asked about the technology areas of interest. And what we came up with, not surprisingly, is artificial intelligence is the biggest game changer. And so it was really interesting because we'd already approached our invitees, our guest speakers for the showcase today, and we have two presentations that are utilizing artificial intelligence in two completely different ways. And so so we're really pleased that it was aligned with our thinking. But machine learning, obviously linked to artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, not surprising, and augmented reality and virtual reality has a small slice of the pie, but I can see that it's certainly going to be a much bigger slice. We presented a very big focus at each of our forums around governance, and we talked about 4 particular levels: data, and in particular the codes that we use, or for some people, they're the domains and the drop-down lists. We talked about the preparatory work using checklists to confirm deliverables. We talked about processes, and we talked about people and quality assurance. So essentially, governance is really the king. If you want to have a successful outcome, then you've got to put in our view is that you've got to put in the work to prepare things and have a process that bundles up all of the different tasks that you undertake, so that there is an understanding of where things are heading. We looked at code lists. A couple of years ago, Digital Hive, one of our partners, has developed a code list API and a web app. Oh, by the way, I've created QR codes. I got a bit clever and found a site that I could create QR codes. So wherever possible, I've created a QR code. So in this particular instance, if you'd like to register your interest to get access to the API, CodeList API, and the web app, just please use this this QR code. If for whatever reason you miss scanning a QR code as we're going through, don't hesitate to put into the chat to request the information. I can't overstate this enough, the importance of education, continuous improvement. We receive a number of requests on a regular basis about how do we interpret something, what kind of process do we use? How do we go from something that's been built to delivering something that's compliant with A-SPEC? So to us, education is part and parcel of being part of the A-SPEC community, and it's an A-SPEC knowledge sharing community. So it's at any time that there's an issue that you want to address, please contact us through the website, through the A-SPEC website, or for those of you that have my details, I'm more than happy to respond to your request. We also spoke about the number of inputs from users, and this was a pretty interesting one. Up until now, we've left the numbering of levels in a building to each individual organisation, thinking that, well, it'll be sorted. A request came in from one of our councils, in fact, the City of Gosnells in WA, to say, can we simplify this, George, because it makes sense that if we have consistency in the naming of levels in a building, then we can automate our validation processes. And I thought, well, why not? Interestingly enough, we did this in the very early stages of our B-SPEC development, and then for whatever reason it dropped out, but now it's back in. And in this particular case, you can see that we've developed it adopting a simple BIM naming convention approach, which is based on the ISO standard that's listed in that particular guide. And Fanni, you may be looking at this curiously. I'm always interested in your opinion, being an architect and project manager, so feel free to comment on it if you need to. Part of the knowledge sharing community is also to show you the kind of inquiries that we get. So the next few slides are doing just that. And in this particular case, it's like, okay, how would you classify these baffles? This came out of a project that we were doing. It was the case study that I presented during our S&W spec forums, where some baffles were to be inserted within the tank. So we asked our community, how would they classify it? Is it a new asset class? Is it a new code in the mechanical equipment table, or is it a new code in the fittings table? So the attendees were asked to vote on it, and essentially what came up was that it was a new code in the mechanical equipment table, and the decision was made based on the function of the asset. So they're the kind of examples that we go through. In this particular instance, we have a park where we have pathways, where we have landscaping or hard landscaping in this instance. And we get a lot of, now with that there's more emphasis on asset data from open space areas, we're getting a lot more inquiries around, well, what's the difference between a pathway and hard landscaping? Why can't we specify hard landscaping throughout? Or why can't we specify pathway throughout just to make it easier? So essentially we look at pathways as a conveyance mechanism. And And if you're curious about it, we determine this by looking at the Cambridge Dictionary, which states it's the process of moving something or someone from one place to another. So, you know, occasionally we get scientific and we go for other forms of verification. What we look at is the pathway is quite clear, and there's a different purpose for a pathway from an asset management perspective, and there's a different purpose for hard landscaping from an asset management perspective, and there are different attributes that are stored against each. So it's really important that we clarify that. I'll just have a look at my timeline because I'm my own timekeeper as well. So, but Michael, if you could give Michael Balfour, if you could give me a 2-minute warning at
Sure.
say 10:38, that would be great. Thanks.
No worries. Done.
So in this particular instance, we fences, walls, retaining walls. What's the difference? You know, fence is a fence, a wall is a wall. Well, not necessarily. So this is another example that we work through with our community, and we ask them to classify: is this a fence? Is it a wall? Is it a retaining wall? So on the surface, it can be easily categorized. So what we went through was, well, what is the impact of not classifying things to the best classification that could possibly be? And what I mean by that is, example A is essentially a fence. So there is some stonework and there is some steel work there, as you can see here. Example B is a retaining wall with a fence sitting on the top of it. Now, what's the difference? Well, it comes down to the level of information. And as you can see, a retaining wall requires far more information. Now, what I've done is I've highlighted in the pale blue the common fields, and also that there's a slight difference with that beigey color on the right. It's called height. On the left, it's average height, maximum height, because of a retaining wall function, whereas a fence is often consistent all the way through. Now, so we look at those sorts of details, and as you can see, the white areas are the areas that are different. So that's from an asset management perspective. Again, we talk through why we have these classifications. And again, talking of walls, how would this be categorized? Now, interestingly enough, I'll see if I can zoom in a bit. Yep. So we asked, so what do we do with this? This is at the start of the subdivision. When you enter the subdivision, this is what you find. You have a wall there. You've got the name of the community, and so we asked people to put into the chat what they thought it was. So we had wall and sign, and then someone said, well, what about the structure and the background? And so we then found out that, well, some people would classify that as artwork. Well, okay, that's fine. So we need to really ask rather than take a guess, because there are so many different attributes that need to be applied. So why is there such a strong emphasis on getting it right? For us, it's pretty simple. It's economics. So in doing that, we want to generate an understanding, the holistic view of costs associated with the data life cycle. Now, this isn't a diagram that I've created, but it's one that I sourced many years ago, and I just thought I would bring it up again and reinforce the point that yes, we've got the design, construct, operate, and you can throw in the planning and renewal phases as well. But if we look at the building life cycle, what we know is that the design and construct forms a very small cost of what the operate function is. Now, from an asset data lifecycle perspective. I remember my time at Melbourne Water when I was learning to do sewer design. We focused on the location first. Where's the primary location that a sewer can be placed or a wastewater pipe could be placed? And the attribution was very, very minor. But by the time it went to the contractor to build, the level of information around the graphics and attribution was really about 50-50. Yes, they needed to know where it was, but they really needed to know what it was that they were building. Whereas by the time it ended up with the asset owner, what was key was the attribution. So from an owner-operator perspective, the focus is more on the attribution than it is on the location. The location is really critical. However, as I say, the attribution is fundamental to that. So, some key messages from our forums. I can't emphasize enough. Share, share, share. The presenters who came were really gracious with what they presented and really made a difference. You know, I'm already experiencing that kind of difference, you know, with an example of a non-member council attending, and they realized they were not the only ones experiencing challenges internally. Funny about that. They thought they were Robinson Crusoe. Another example where a consultant approached me about how they can streamline their tasks. So that was really great. Communication is not just about talking. Get curious, get interested in people, your colleagues.
Excuse me, George.
Thank you,
2
Michael.
minutes. 2 minutes.
Awesome. And find out what people are dealing with. It's not just about what they're dealing with a particular challenge at work. It might be something that they're dealing with away from work that might be impacting their workplace. So it's really critical to get a connection with people. Now, not everybody desires that connection, but it doesn't hurt asking. From a data governance perspective, it's about creating the certainty and confidence from both sides of the fence. So the checklists are vital because that creates an understanding of what the expectation is of being delivered and the expectation of what needs to be captured. And from the future-proofing side, yes, it's an ongoing process. It's good to have an awareness of what goes on around you, but more importantly, to look at how that, is it going to have an impact on what you're doing? Is it going to have an impact on the deliverable of what you're asking the community to do? And so from a GISA perspective, we're always looking at what difference can we make to the community that's going to make it easier to create the successful outcomes that the specifications are designed to do. So that is the end of my session. Now, what I get to do now.
Just a second, George, before you.
Yes.
There's just a poll, a rating poll for your presentation. If everyone could do that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Am I allowed to vote?
Yeah. No names are taken, George.
Okay. So thanks, Michael. Okay. So Dr. Fanni Melles, is that correct, Fanni? Did I pronounce it correctly? Great. You taught me that the last time we met, so thank you. So she is a future of cities researcher, an architect by profession, and a project manager by experience. And before her PhD studies, Dr. Melles was a project manager and a master planner for Hungary's biggest urban development in the last 150 years, and involved working with 10 design teams. So, you know, it's a pretty amazing experience that you've had there. So earning her PhD from Swinburne University in 2023, she specialized in the practical implementation of the future of cities and smart cities concepts. So Dr. Melles hosts the podcast, What is the Future for Cities? And has recently celebrated her 2-year anniversary, as we spoke about during our networking session. So in her own words, Fanni excels at harnessing chaos and ambiguity into practical systems. So I'm looking forward to hearing how you do that, Fanni. Passionate about tailoring unique futures for cities, she's an adept facilitator working with various stakeholders to ensure urban influence and client satisfaction. Her belief, cities reflect the people in them, and she's here to shape their transformation. So on that note, the floor is over to you, Fanni. Looking forward to what you present to us.
Thank you, George. Just a second while I share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So, what if I told you the term smart city is complete rubbish? And what if I told you that we can change the smart city term and thus the future of cities with just 2 letters? It's time to reframe the smart city term to something more useful, the smarter city. How many of you have heard the term smart city and thought, yay, that's the future? And how many of you have heard the term smart city and thought, oh no, not again? Now, if we shift our perspectives just a tad from the smart city to the smarter city, we can arrive to a better solution. Today, we are embarking on a journey through time and ideas. We'll delve into the history of the smart city, explore its various definitions, and ponder its future. But much more importantly, we'll discuss how we can transform this concept into something genuinely beneficial for our urban landscapes. I stand before you as a passionate researcher for the future of cities, molded by the art of architecture and sharpened by the rigors of project management. Over the past 6 years, I have been on a quest to demystify the smart city concept. This journey was ignited by my international experiences in designer roles when I realized the immense potential we have in shaping the future of cities. And candidly, I believe we, as designers, could do so much more. In my research, I've had the privilege of engaging with 43 Melbourne-based architects, urban planners, and designers. And I also have the joy of hosting the What is the Future for Cities podcast, where we dive deep into these topics. Based on all of these, it is time we reframe the term smart city. So here is my pledge to you today. By the end of our time together, we'll uncover ways to transform the smart city into the smarter city, a concept that truly serves our urban communities. So let's jump right into this, and I would like to ask you to play along with me because that is so much more fun than just talking into the void. So please share in the chat, what do you think? How old is the smart city idea? I see a 50-year. Nice. $15. Okay. Thank you, George. Between 15 and 20. Okay. Now, surprisingly, the term smart city first surfaced in 1990 at a conference titled The Technopolis Phenomenon: Smart Cities, Fast Systems, Global Networks. That makes the concept older than even me. Yet, even back then, the term smart city was ambiguous. No one really pinned down a definition. As the years rolled on, cities began experimenting with the idea, academia offered insights, and industries proposed solutions. In 2007, the iPhone revolutionized our perception of smartness, reshaping the smart city narrative. However, throughout all of this, there were voices emphasizing the importance of people at the heart of the smart city. And just coming back to the academic aspect, what do you think? Does theory lead practice? Practice lead theory? Both? Neither? Or cheese? Please share your number in the chat. I see you, Yvonne. Two. Okay. Conflicting ideas. That's exciting. 3, 2. Wow. Okay. Awesome. So 3 of the 6 answers say both. Well, academia has always been eager to define and refine the smart city concept. Sorry about the noise outside. But sometimes in their zeal, not just in our zeal, we might miss the mark. After its first mention, smart cities started to pop up mainly in practice, and then academia jumped in trying to help. Researchers investigated these case studies and offered improvements. However, they went a step further, starting to theorize on what the smart city should be, creating definitions for the smart city. These theories have been applied to practice without much success. Now, researchers are concluding what the smart city should be, even though probably practice does not agree. Nassim Nicholas Taleb humorously links this idea or this process to the Bird Academy. Researchers investigate how birds fly, they create case studies, then they start teach to birds how to fly, and then they conclude that birds fly because of academic teaching. While academic insights are invaluable, there is a need for a balance between theory and practice. Do you think there is the smart city concept? Please share your answer in the chat. I see a yes. Okay, that's interesting. No. Again, conflicting ideas. Yay! Okay, so from my research, I've concluded that a singular definition for the smart city doesn't exist and probably shouldn't exist, but we will get back to that. The smart city term is a palindrome, a chameleon term, changing colors based on context. Some say it's the tech-driven city, others say it's a governance model. Others focus on smart citizens. The smart city concept has been linked to sustainability and resilience and many other fancy urban terms. My PhD participants describe the smart city as forward-thinking, innovation, and adaptation. And there are a myriad of other definitions out there. But perhaps this ambiguity stems from the very nature of cities themselves. Another question for you. What does the city mean to you? Healthy communities. Thanks, George. Hub of activity. Okay. Thanks, Kylie. Sorry. Connected networks. People density, improved services and functions. Thank you very much for the answers. Well, cities have been described in numerous ways, as we saw it in the chat, from the mere built environments to intricate networks, and even as the manifestations of humanity. I view cities as the emergent properties of their urban agents, much like how bees create the swarm. They are the reflection of our evolution, choices, and connections. Thus, each city is unique, and so their futures should be too. That is why a one-size-fits-all smart city definition is elusive. Even though academics want to create the smart city definition, practitioners know from their experiences that there is no one definition which can help cities flourish with various characteristics. The smart city creates the illusion that it can mean the same for everybody. After all, we have a definition in the Oxford Dictionary about what smartness means. That is unachievable in cities with various characteristics. Plus, smartness implies something which is a final destination, an attainable goal. However, cities evolve with us humans. A city without an evolution is dead. Any urban future term needs to allow for worldwide differences and continuous evolution. So, we can fix the term smart city with just 2 letters. Enter the smarter city approach. While the smart city implies the same meaning, the smarter city means different for everybody, allowing the needed differences among places. While the smart city means a final destination, the smarter city always involves the next step. We can be always smarter, right? Our cities can always become smarter, right? However, we can take it a step further with smarter approaches. The majority of our cities and our built environments are already present, and our decisions and approaches can be more malleable. We can change our approaches to the cities. We can approach the future of cities in smarter ways, creating a better future for our descendants. So, how can this look in reality? Imagine a flywheel, a heavy rotating wheel that once set in motion maintains its momentum. It's hard to start, but once it's moving, it becomes self-sustaining. Now apply this concept to our cities. The smarter city flywheel is a strategic approach that focuses on sustainable growth and change. It's a self-reinforcing loop that propels cities towards a clear vision, one small step at a time. Cities need to establish their own smarter approaches and future directions, something like a long-term but loose vision. They need to express what smartness, or however they want to call their future, means to them. This vision can guide the longer-term strategies and the daily tactics, trials, and projects. As these trials, tactics, and strategies are implemented, they provide valuable feedback to inform the vision itself. The vision adapts, tactics evolve, and the flywheel gains momentum. Over time, the city moves closer to its vision, but the journey never truly ends. There is always room for improvement. There is always a next step. Amsterdam exemplifies this approach. Their Smart City initiative began by involving citizens in identifying urban challenges. This grassroots feedback led to targeted projects and trials. As these were implemented, they provided insights that redefined the city's overarching vision. And the cycle continued, with each iteration making the city a little bit smarter, a little bit better. Frans Anton Vermast from Amsterdam Smart City once shared on the What is the Future for Cities podcast's 3rd episode that they are on their 8th version of their smart city definition. But that's the beauty of it. As the city evolves, so does its definition of smart. Since we create the city, as the bees do with the swarm, it matters what we decide and do. The smarter city flywheel can be applied to any organization which is willing to take steps towards a better future. So think of your organizations, your communities. How can you set your own smarter city flywheel in motion? Remember, the hardest part is the initial push. But once it's moving, the possibilities are endless. And if you ever need guidance on this journey, I'm here to help. So, what did we talk about today? We unraveled the myth of the smart city and recognized that a one-size-fits-all definition isn't just elusive, it's dangerous. The essence of cities lies in their continuous evolution, and the term smarter city captures that spirit. But we can and should go beyond. With smarter approaches, we can tailor our strategies to the unique fabric of each city, setting in motion the smarter city flywheel. I share my insights not just as knowledge, but as a call to action. History teaches us, and by understanding the past and the critiques of the smart city concept, we can forge a path that's not just smart, but smarter. So what's our takeaway? What can we do today to pave a brighter, a smarter future for our cities and, by extension, for generations to come, for our grandchildren and their grandchildren? First, let's recognize the diversity of cities, let go of the quest for the smart city, and embrace the idea that each city has its unique rhythm and needs. Second, broaden our horizons, transition from the smart city to smarter cities and even smarter approaches, tailored to each city's unique context. And third, empower each city and organization to discover its own flywheel and smarter strategies. Together, we can shape a brighter future for our urban landscapes and humanity as a whole. If today's discussion has sparked curiosity, or if you are keen to delve deeper, I'm here for you. Reach out to me at info@fannimelles.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you need even more insights, tune in to the What is the Future for Cities podcast on the WTFforcities.com website and on popular platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcast. My name is Fanni Melles, and I would like to leave you with this final thought. If we aim not just to be smart, but be smarter, if we commit to evolving consciously and continuously, we can craft a legacy, the better future which our descendants will be proud of and grateful for.
Thank you, Fanny. I just had to find my unmute button. So, well, that was great. I'm in. I'm in for a smarter city.
Yay!
Yes. So if people are starting, what would be the first thing that they need to consider if they're going to develop their own flywheel?
Who are the stakeholders, and what is the shared vision for this, for their organization and for their cities? That would help them to find where are they starting from, what are the next steps, what can be the longer term strategies, and the very short term trials and tactics. So, for example, Amsterdam established the Amsterdam Smart City Vision with the citizens, and then they invited back the citizens to identify the strategies and the very small projects, yearly trials to work on first. And then they iterated for the next year and for the next year. So I think the first step is finding and involving all of the stakeholders. Again, sorry about the noise outside, but with the stakeholders, a vision can be found. This is also useful because if the stakeholders understand and agree with the vision, then they are willing to work for that vision. They are willing to do what it takes to move towards that vision.
That makes sense. It's easier when you say it than to actually do it. We all know this. So what I'm getting is the communication aspect, find out what people are interested in, and then use that as the baseline to brainstorm.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Now, if you have a question for Fanni, we've got a few more minutes. Please put it into the chat, and we'll and then we can raise that, or feel free to take yourself off mute and to ask Fanni directly. So whilst people are working out what they're going to ask you, Fanni, are you on the Smart Cities Council?
Yes, I am. I am involved in the Future Place Code task force, and we are also discussing whether, for example, this kind of flywheel approach is useful to be involved in the practical implementation of the smart city idea.
Okay. And if other people want to get involved with the Smart Cities Council, how can they do that?
I can get back to you with this question because I was fortunate enough to meet with them at the Smart Cities Council conference. Yep. So that was my entry. Otherwise, tune into their podcast, tune into their conferences. They also always have every event, and you can always write to them. They will answer sooner or later how you can be involved, how you can help them if you are keen to contribute to this part of the urban future.
Yeah, I think that's really good for people to understand that. I've been involved in a couple of workshops when, interestingly enough, a few years ago when they were talking about the concept of a definition for smart cities. You know, my experience about determining definitions is that it's not a one size fits all. And so how do you get agreement on that? Having been in the geospatial industry all of my life, I'm still waiting for the definition about determining what GIS is. So I sometimes think that it's a distraction rather than just getting on and doing stuff. And, you know, acknowledging, you know what, we do this. Do we need a definition for it? I don't know.
It was really interesting. During my PhD, I asked my participants, architects, urban planners, and engineers, what they think about the smart city, what they think about smart design. And they described that the smart city doesn't really have any practical use for them. Plus, they wouldn't really talk about smart design. They are much more interested in good design principles. So when they were talking about how we can do better as designers for better future for cities, they were not really labeling it. They were talking about what the actual steps they could take towards being better urban experts, providing better designs, providing better advocacy for governments. So partially, my participants agree with you that we shouldn't really talk about what this smartness means. We should move towards the, okay, then what should we do? What are the actions?
Well, I think we're all smart in our own special ways, as my wife constantly tells me. Okay, so look, thank you very much again, Fanny. That was terrific. You know, I've now had an opportunity to see you in action, and as you will see, Michael has just posted the poll for Fanny. So, and if you have any questions, if all of a sudden you've had a popcorn moment and you've realised there was a question that you wanted to ask that you didn't, please pop it into the chat. Now, whilst you're looking at your speaker rating, I'll share my screen again, and we'll can everybody see my screen? Michael, can you see my screen?
Yes, George.
Great, thank you. Okay, so here's the QR code for Fanny again to get access to her on LinkedIn and connect with her if that's your interest. All right, so moving on to our first presentation around application of artificial intelligence, I want to introduce Andrew Dale. So Andrew has a fairly impressive CV. He's not one that goes about telling people what he does or what he can do. He just does it. That's been my experience. But I have this introduction that I want to make for Andrew. So as a C-level executive with extensive experience in commercializing ICT businesses across the Asian and US markets, Andrew has successfully led the commercialization of several ICT businesses, including the development of AI-based equine welfare monitoring applications. Along with a deep understanding of global SaaS product offerings, software as a service, he'll be giving us a snapshot into the world of AI. Andrew's presentation will outline to us the development of AI-based technology within the equine welfare space. So, Andrew, over to you.
Thanks, George.
Feel free to share your screen, or do you want us to share it?
Yeah, actually, could you do it, George? I'm rebuilding one of my systems at the moment. That's, as you know from yesterday, when I tried to get the application across. Unfortunately, I had a few issues with the data center. So, if you've got a copy of my presentation,
I do. Just bear with me for a sec.
I apologise for that, everyone. While George is doing that, I'll just touch on a couple of things and the reasons why George thought this was a great opportunity for me to sort of just explain to people what's happening in the AI world that a lot of people wouldn't be aware of. I've known George for a long time, and I've been watching George's progression through what he's developed and what he's been working on, and it's an area that I find extremely interesting with what I do in the defence industry as well, in regards to deploying with a family member, actually, defence hardening projects around defence bases in this country. We almost finished the Williamtown Air Force Base, which is the Newcastle Airport, actually. And, what we're doing there is we're deploying artificial intelligence-based cameras that are US designed to help protect our borders. So there's opportunities with what George does in regards to finding assets in the ground, because I don't know if you would all be aware of this, but on an Air Force base, before you even go to the toilet, you almost need to get a pass and be checked and be scanned. And, when you're digging with excavators and running fibre optic cable and connecting to networks, people need to be aware of what you're doing, who you're doing it for, and hopefully you don't have a relationship with Huawei and have one of their modems, because you'll never be able to dial in and get any access from the cloud. So thanks for putting that up, George. And again, if you see a couple of different font errors in this presentation, it's only because of the fact I had to pull some data from different areas, because some of the data that we do work with is quite sensitive. And the reason I say that, in the equine world, some of the data we have, and as I touched on earlier, on, let's say, a racehorse, from a well-being perspective, we've identified when a horse shouldn't even be in a race. And that's one of the reasons why the product was developed around equine welfare, because there's been a lot of media over the last 10 years about projects called Nut for the Cup, and horses shouldn't be running, and the unfortunate way that some trainers and owners treat their horses. We wanted to make sure that the equine industry was doing the right thing by the actual animal to ensure the longevity of not just their racing career, but their life in general. So if you can go to the next slide, George, I'll just touch on a little bit about Alerte as a group and our AI journey. There's 4 groups down the bottom: Alert Digital Health, Singularity, Alert Digital Sport, and Alert Equine Science. Even though I'm talking about science today, I want to talk about the way an AI engine works. And I'll use a child as an example. When a child sees a cat, they normally see, and you ask them to draw a cat, everyone would have seen it. They do the big round face, the 2 pointy ears, the whiskers, put a smiley face on it. Now, that's what they think a cat is. But when the cat changes and their brain sees something differently, it saves it into what we call their little filing cabinet in the back of their mind. In Alert Digital Health, we did that, and I'll use as an example, we have 57 years of health data on echo and cardiograms. Now, what we're able to do is put that into our engine with what we've done in regards to doing faster, more accurate analysis of people's ECGs based on the artificial intelligence that we've been building into that health region. The reason we did it, it normally takes anyone that's had an ECG can take up to 45 minutes. We've got it down to 15 minutes, which helps the health industry. But what we're also able to do is when we reverse engineered the data that we had on the 57 years, we had a 99.98% accuracy of what the person actually passed away of, because we were able to see the engine had been taught to understand what the end result was. So we reverse engineered the result and then found out what the actual issue was. Singularity, very similar, we do in the mining industry, where instead of having a normal maintenance regime in the Pilbara with BHP and Rio Tinto, they use Singularity to be able to identify when a fan belt, a cog, a wheel, something would break down on a piece of equipment. And the accuracy was so close that we could go in a week before an incident would happen, and then we would actually change the part to actually then keep productivity up. Now, Alert Equine Science was spawned off the Alert Digital Sport Group. And as you'd all see with the AFL and with rugby, the players will run around with a device that's in the back of their jumper, which realistically is just a fancy way to heat map and to show where the players are. It doesn't actually pick up what the player's doing. What we identified from that is that grabbing that data and grabbing a human's training data, we were able to put that data into our engine. And I'll use as an example. I can do this because it's not a legal issue, but when Cyril Rioli was using the device when we were trialling it, we had to pull him up at Hawthorn, and we had a chat to Jeff Kennedy and said, we want to have a bit of an issue here. We can see that Cyril's pulling up 10 metres short in every one of his run-throughs on the data that we have. And they said what we were able to identify that when this had happened in the past, Cyril would actually do a hamstring. So we actually said to them that this was the issue, and they took no notice, and 2 days later, Cyril did his hamstring. So someone one day in a hotel after consuming several refreshing ales, someone said, "Gee, imagine if we could do this in the equine industry, because a horse can't talk, but if we could grab their data based on the same information of not 2 legs but 4, we might be able to save the welfare of equine athletes and also the individuals that ride them, because you've seen of past, there's been major injuries to jockeys and deaths. And those horses, when they break down, it's normally because they have an injury before they go into the race. So taking all of that alert knowledge that we've built, the funny thing here is it's one AI engine. We just taught the one AI engine to do all of these things, and they all learn from each other. It doesn't matter if it's mechanical, human, or even equine. We're able to take that information and predict the possibility of an injury, a breakdown, or in that case of the ecos, someone who may have a heart attack and die within a certain time frame, which we've got to be careful there, because someone said you can't play God. And that's true, but we can at least give people advice to a doctor to be able to say, hey, listen, you need to change the way that your sort of lifestyle is. So, George, if you can just flick across to the next. Okay, so what you're seeing here is, and I'm sorry about the size of the data, but what I can put down, I can explain what it is. The product in our AI equine welfare is something quite unique, because, again, a horse can't talk. Even though George mentioned earlier, my father is a horse chiropractor, and he can watch a horse walk. He's an old timer and got a gift. There is no doubt about it. And he could normally see something in the way that the horse would walk that would say, hey, the horse has a fetlock, a hind quarter, or a whatever issue. So the saddlecloth that you see there, the blue saddlecloth, is what we do for Racing Victoria, which is used on the international horses right now that are here, because the Victoria Racing Club can't afford to have another horse die in a Melbourne Cup, because it's causing international mayhem when it comes to the equine welfare and the individuals protesting against racing in general. So in that saddlecloth, in each corner, we have an accelerometer. And those accelerometers actually send information back to a device about the size of a matchbox that we've created that sits in that saddlecloth. When the horse gallops, if you look to the left-hand side, you'll see all the axes of the camera, the horse around his shoulder, his hindquarters, and so on. There's up to 64 vectors there that we're able to capture that data on and put it into an engine. So if you look underneath there, there's actually, it's just quite interesting that I put this piece of data in there, but there's the data on a horse called Gold Trip. That horse won last year's Melbourne Cup. So we had the data on that racehorse, and as you can see, there's a blue and a red line that actually increases about halfway through, slows down and increases again. That's the track work of the horse. What's happening there is that as the horse walks, trots, canters, and then goes into a gallop in track work, it then would go through what we call furlongs or 200-metre sectors. Thanks, George. And in those 200-metre sectors, we've got one side of the horse versus the other side of the horse to see how they're actually galloping. You'll see a couple of red spikes. In those red spikes was the fact that the horse was changing stride a little bit when it was under pressure. What we can now show on the right-hand side of that, George, if you can just move that across, there's the sectional times there. And what those sectional times is shows how fast the horse was going when walking, trotting, galloping, and cantering. What I don't have in there is the heart rate data on the horse's recovery, because we can actually capture that. And like a human, as you guys know, when you play sport or you run and you're exhausted. I know George was an elite basketballer. He would know what it's like to be cooling down after one of his strenuous games. Your body takes time to recuperate, but some horses faster than others, and that would show the fitness level of the horse. So that data that we've collected there is really quite unique. No one in the world does it, and you may see it on the first slide. We actually do this in conjunction with Melbourne University. We have artificial intelligence and mechatronics PhDs that actually work with us that have helped us develop and design a lot of this technology. We've had support from the Victorian government, and I presented this in China to a tech conference there with what's called the ASTN, the Australian Sports and Technology Network, run by James Demetrio, which is Andrew's brother from the AFL. So taking all of that information into account, George, can you sort of take that slide back to its main screen just to show the horse? We're able to ensure that horse there is going to be protected, because underneath there's actually a red dot which says high and a low that says green. What that meant is at that time frame there was an issue when the horse was walking on the grass. We can go across, see when that was, go back to the footage and identify what happened. So if there is an injury, we can then put it into the sectors that are actually shown above and identify that a horse may be short in front, but it could be coming from its hindquarters because the horse can't tell you. So we're able to identify that early, alert the veterinarians or the trainer to say, hey, you know, we've worked with some of the biggest trainers in Australia and we've saved not just their horse from any more pain or suffering, but because, and it is unfortunate to state it this way, but in this situation, they're working athletes and they run for prize money for owners, and the owners want to be ensured that the data that they're receiving on their horse is accurate. So, George, if you don't mind, just popping to the next slide. Okay, and again, that was a bit of a picture of what you saw before on the front screen. That just shows the sectionals and it shows gold trips running. And then you've got that heart rate recovery. And as you can see it quickly from up the top around that sort of, I can't see, George, if you mind just increasing that just a fraction for me. Thank you. Around the 1:58 mark down to being very, very quickly in a recovery mode after 10 minutes. What that means to us is the horse is extremely fit. And that data was taken after he ran 5th in the Cox Plate and he came out and won the Melbourne Cup. So we were able to very comfortably say to the owner and the trainer that your horse was fit. But the artificial intelligence and the engine that was built could be used for anything, even what George does within his business. If we have all of his data into an engine and he says, here's what's happened and how many pipes or pits we've had to work in and pieces of equipment that need to be replaced over a period of time, we can then build a schedule around that to make sure that the preventative maintenance is done to ensure that things are actually working properly. George, if you pop onto the next slide. Okay, don't want to confuse you too much, but within the infrastructure of our artificial intelligence, you can see an injury sample, a lead-up injury sample, and a non-injury sample. Well, the top one just shows that everything sort of flatlines. Then what you'll see is the red spikes in the lead up, and then the actual injury sample. We're able to go back into the input layers and the hidden layers of each leg. Now, this is quite unique. Anyone that understands, George said before about what's king within industries. In our industry, data's king. And everybody for years used to say that, yeah, cash was king and memory was king and speed was king. But it's data. If you can capture the data, if you can capture it, you can manage it. If you can manage it, then you've actually got an opportunity to change the way business is not just created now, but what future business you can build or develop around the technology you work with. We've been able to identify 3 certain unique verticals that we would have never been able to gain revenues from, because of the fact that we now have this data. And people said that veterinarians would have been very upset with us because we would be putting them out of business. Well, it's actually quite the opposite. We can actually say to the owners of the equine athlete, hey, here's your data. By the way, you may want to contact your vet and get them out. So now we have vets that use the product as part of their investigation when they go to a call out on an injured animal or horse, in this case, and we can say to them, throw the saddle cloth on, you'll be able to see what we see, and then they can go straight to the point instead of just injecting them with Butte or one of the other products they use to sort of just take pain away, because taking the pain away just masks the issue. But, you know, it's really important because the work we've done with universities and the sensors that we've actually built, it's all Australian made. And there's a lot of very intelligent people in this country that are looking to work with any organisation that's interested in artificial intelligence and how it can help them with their industry.
Excuse me, Andrew. Yeah, 2-minute warning.
Yep, thank you. Can you go to the next one, George? So just a small overview of some of the large stables that we work with. And, you know, we work with Melbourne University, Australian research grants and so on, you know, with Racing Vic, Malua Racing and Clinton. Like, these are big stables within the country. That's something you can have a look within your own time. But we've got, you know, millions of minutes of data now that's actually being put into a main engine so that when any horse's data goes into it, it sits across and looks at every piece of data that's ever gone into the AI engine, because 99 times out of 100, a horse has a very similar gait. George, the next slide. This is the industries that we've been successful in: Thoroughbred, Pony Club, Polo. It's going to be quite wacky and you're going to think we're mad, but we're actually now being approached by some very wealthy people within the UAE. They want to put it on their racing camels. And the camel has a gait just like anything else, but obviously they don't race for money over there. They race for prestige. But the largest racing stable in this country, which is the Cummings stable, which for the Sheikh Muktoum, he has 10,000 camels in his racing stable. He only has 4,000 horses. So it just shows you that we can put this device on any sort of animal. George, next, please. And just detection, analysis, and remedy. That's what it's all about. But that's what in AI in business in general. We can detect and change a baseline of any action. We can analyze, in this case, an injury, but it could be a piece of hardware or it could be an asset in the ground. And the remedy is how we understand the injury severity and managing it, just like we manage any business that we have data on. Thanks, George. And it's just what we've actually got proven data. We've improved 73% of the injury analysis. We've been able to improve operational agility by 36%, and the longevity of the actual equine athlete or any piece of business that we work in is a 53% optimal increase, is in that case winning stakes rates, but in business in general. George? Now, that's just me in a nutshell, but I wanted to explain to you guys today that artificial intelligence isn't just about ChatGPT and people lying on tests and thinking they know what they're writing, because if you don't put your own sort of pen to paper and deliver your own sort of outcomes, you're not telling the truth. But artificial intelligence at this point in time, used properly, it's telling the truth. So we work with anyone that's interested in needing some assistance, and if we can't help them, we've got many interns and individuals happy to help and work on projects with them in the background. Thanks, George.
Thanks, Andrew. That was amazing. I love the tie-up with the BHP bit. That's the thing that pricked my ears up. But have you got a human blanket?
Oh, we actually do. We've actually, just a very quick story on that. We presented it to someone in the RACV club one day. And anyone that would appreciate the RACV club, the head of our company from a technical perspective, his name is Razali Muhammad. So he's a young Muslim gentleman with a PhD in this, and take this with a grain of salt because everybody found it funny at the time. As we were sitting at the table in the RACV club, and he was explaining how he had the device connected to his body so he could show the data on his computer. He lifted his shirt up and he had wires all hanging from his body. And I've never seen so many people run so fast in my life out of the RACV club because they thought he was going to take them all out. So quite funny, but Razali is an amazing human being that has worked in this industry for nearly 12 years now. And we're delivering amazing outcomes to people that just need assistance. And again, as George knows, it's not about always making money as us as a company. If we can help in any way, open doors, network with people, introduce to people in the United States, our contacts in Asia are massive. We're here to help in any way we can.
Thank you, Andrew. I think I class you as the human connector. So appreciate it. Yeah, look, that was an amazing presentation, and yeah, I can honestly say I now have a better understanding about, AI and its application and how you don't need to be replicating things all the time. That was a missing piece for me. And also I got can't measure it, can't manage it.
Yep, that's it.
So thanks again. Okay. So moving on to our next presentation. And I'd like to introduce two gentlemen, Andrej Mocicka and Christian Fellinger. Andrej is the Australian country manager of Spatial and a stalwart of the spatial and surveying sectors. I've known Andrej, sorry, I'm getting my A's mixed up. I've known Andrej for many years. Apologies, Andrej. And yes, so he's always an entertaining presenter. And Christian, he's colleague is the National Sales Manager of One Spatial in Australia. So they're going to take us through what they call the next generation of data validation and correction. So with that, over to you, gentlemen, to share your screens and present.
Thank you very much, George. Thank you for the opportunity, and I welcome everybody. And I will now share my screen. Just bear with me for a minute. I'll see if I can do this. Present in Teams. Present. Is everybody seeing? Oh, give it a minute. Hopefully the technology is working.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Thumbs up, Andrej.
Are we seeing it?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent.
There it is. Good one.
Excellent. All righty. So Christian and myself will be giving you a very quick run through on the GDV Hub. This is a joint venture that we've been developing now with Digital Hive for a number of years. And we've now officially launched it, and it is now available for people to actually use. So just a little bit about One Spatial. We are an international company. We are globally around the world, with head office being in Cambridge in the UK. We have offices in Ireland, the US, France, Belgium, Tunisia, and in Australia. And we have people in the various locations: Canberra, Perth, Sydney, Brisbane. We even have a staff member in Mount Isa, believe it or not, and in Melbourne. The marvels of technology. So why did we develop the GDV Hub, and why is it important to you? So we recognise that there is a broad cohort of people that are in the development industry, in housing. And it goes to the heart of data quality assurance with regard to the GDV Hub, being able to ensure that data is fit for purpose and trustworthy. It allows all parties to correct the created data, whether you be the property developer or you be the referral authority that is receiving the information. The benefits include creating integrity and workability of the data. It introduces governance with regard to the data, eliminates duplication, the improvement in your processes, the customer service, and the quality and completeness and accuracy of data is what we're looking to try and do, and complying with the specific data requirements. Ultimately, it allows the asset owners to manage their assets effectively and efficiently. And George talked about that earlier on today. So in summary, the challenge that we had was that land developers, local governments, utilities, consultants, other professionals associated with land development, asset management industries needed to be able to lodge their design and as constructed information so that it was fit to the specifications that are being detailed by organisations. So how did we resolve to come up with a solution? We're using our One Integrate and One Data Gateway technology to create a SaaS portal. The key benefits: it is a web-based portal that you can lodge your information to get logically corrected A-SPEC data. The platform provides for the ability for continuation of new standards, as well as for the improvements to the A-SPEC standard as time goes on. The A-SPEC was an interesting conundrum that we had so far as there were 7 disciplines of the A-SPEC standard, and Christian will elaborate a little bit more about that when he talks. It automatically, so what we've tried to do is have it so that it automatically corrects in a single process for all 7 disciplines. It corrects the as constructed and designed data, and we've now made it so that it is ready to support the 2023 standard when it's officially approved by the GISA organisation. So the features, it is a cloud-based application. It does logical corrections to the A-SPEC standards. So not only are you validating the data, but you're also correcting it as you lodge the information. So the data is lodged in 3 different formats: in shapefile, MIF-MID, and GeoPackage. The user does not need to have any lodging skill sets, etc. They just need to be able to drag and drop or specify where the file is, and the process will go off and do the validation and correction. As we mentioned, it supports for the current and previous versions. User-friendly, drag and drop, automatically determines the A-SPEC standard or discipline that is in the data file. It's a pay-as-you-lodge scenario. There's dashboard information. I'll talk a bit more about that. There's no need to purchase any software. Auto correction is the service that we're providing. It provides schema mapping and lodge and process all A-SPEC disciplines in a single lodgement. So there's 2 levels of access to the system. One of them being at the supplier level. So typically this would be the land developer that is providing the as constructed or design data. And then you have the administrator, which is typically the way that we see it, the referral authority that is receiving the information, or it could be a large supplier organisation that has a number of people that are accessing the system and supplying the data. And the reason why this is really useful is that it then provides through the dashboard the ability for people to be able to, or for you to be able to have a look at where people are doing the right thing, where the data is right and working well, and where it's failing, and where there may need to be some additional support or assistance in providing the data to a quality that is required. The other thing is from a perspective of the management to see who's lodging, how much they're lodging. So from a management point of view, being able to say, this system is working for us because we're getting a lot of people in our organisation using it, and they're being very efficient and getting the data through quickly. So some of the tests for the spatial relationships, I'm just going to quickly run through some of the tests. It's by means not all of the tests for correcting that we do. So one of them being the test for correct spatial relationship. The example here is the swale centerline to a swale. The swale centerline must be completely inside the swale. If it is touching
Andrej,
the edges.
Can I interrupt you for a moment?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just me, but I'm still just seeing the first slide.
Oh, okay. All right then. So something is not working here. Yes, okay. Reload the display presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Hey. Are you seeing it now?
I'm just seeing the first slide.
Is that now?
First slide, Andrej.
Yep, that's it.
Second slide. Okay, so that's the company outline.
Yes.
So you can go through these slides yourselves. That's the why is it important? The summary of the information, which talk about the challenge. How did we solve the problem with our One Data Gateway? The 7 disciplines and the features and the 2 levels of access that I talked about.
Right.
Okay, and the board reports, or the dashboard, if you like, where we can look at it from 2 parts, where you're looking at the quality of the data, and then you're talking about how being able to observe how the system is being used by staff members, etc. So this is where I got to when George highlighted the fact that you're not seeing anything. So the test for the correct spatial information. So what we are able to do is automatically go through and correct the data to the standards where it is logical for us to be able to do it. It's important for me to highlight the fact that we won't correct the data where it requires the developer to be correcting it. It's not our job to correct data that is incorrect based on them making a blunder or a mistake in that
Excuse
regard.
me, Andre, it's a
Yep.
2-minute warning.
2-minute warning. Okay, very quickly. Sorry about that. We'll keep going. Spelling corrections, data types, schemas. So correcting the information where we can automatically go through our schema mapping and it will correct it. Corrections continued. I'll go through that. I'll close it off here and let Christian have 1 minute. The 3 favorite features: mapping your layers to the authoritative layer and saving it for next time, verifying spatial relations, center lines with polygons, and automatically resolving specific. And these were from George Havakis, the Managing Director of GISA International. And on that, I'll hand it over to Christian.
Perfect. I'll let you navigate the slides, Andre, if you want. This is the title screen for the GDV Hub page. Go to the next one. We can show you what the login looks like. When you're signing up, everyone gets a user account and access. And this is the assignments page, which allows you to carry out a certain action. So as Andre mentioned, correction services for the current A-SPEC standard. And then we've got additional checks. So once the 2023 version is supported, we can add support for that. You can see at the bottom, there's a couple of tiles for that as well. And then everyone who has access to the GDV Hub receives free access to what we call the Essential Geometry Checker, which checks against or validates data against OGC standards. Legally, we have to change the name from OGC to Essential Checker, hence that. So some of the next steps, just finishing off, you can register interest in GDV Hub at that address. You'll be given access to the portal once you've registered. Join the community. Where you receive 4 free submissions. You can also purchase additional bulk credits, as we call them. In terms of supporting standards, D, R, and O-SPEC are supported. We're working on implementing B, S, and W, and additional standards like the T-SPEC, which is still being worked on by GISA. Next slide, please. In terms of assistance, obviously, the GISA for the A-SPEC standard. A-SPEC submissions, Digital Hive, who's a partner in developing the GDV Hub platform, and then information regarding the address for the GDV Hub OneSpatial itself. Some next steps if you're wanting to learn more. We're doing a deep dive lunch and learn session on GDV Hub on October 12th. So this is where we're looking at doing live presentations, looking at the commercial aspects, pricing for the GDV Hub. We have a customer presentation and looking at some of the future enhancements that are coming in the platform. Totally free, so I encourage you to sign up to that. And then we're running again our annual breakfast seminar for 4 cities this time around: Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney, Perth. So updates on the OneSpatial technology, fantastic guest presenters, and for any FME users, we'll be sharing some of the insights from the FME World Tour over in Bonn last month, which would be really good. Great, I was lucky enough to attend. And that's a web link to our events and webinars page where you can find further information on the event and a promo code if you want to attend the event and get a bit of a discount for the breakfast seminar. I'll also post a link to each of those into the chat. Yeah, that's a whirlwind tour of GDV Hub. Any questions? Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you very much, gents, and thank you for your passion and commitment to excellence. So you can see in your chat, there's the next poll has popped up. Please complete that, and again, if you have any further questions, pop them into the chat, and we'll make sure that they get responded to. All right, so I'll take over the screen. Okay, so there's the QR codes for both Andre and Christian. Okay, continuing on with our next excellent presenter, and is Johan Nel. And so I want to spend a little bit of time doing an intro to Johan, because he's been part of the A-SPEC community for some time, and he'll take us through what Open Spatial does for the community. But Johan has a master's in geography and is a founding member of Open Spatial in Australia. Been involved in GIS since 1989 and CAD and database since 1996. So when Autodesk acquired the technology company he worked for. Johan has been working with councils and utilities for more than 30 years to provide GIS and CAD-based solutions, and has been instrumental in the development of the ACDC platform and the portal at asconstructed.com. I felt like I should have grabbed some, ACDC music, maybe TNT or Dynamite or something, but I wasn't quick enough to do that. But maybe next time, Johan. So Johan will be providing us with an update to the ACDC portal and the updated validation rules that the portal's performing, and introducing some of the warnings, and talking about the release of the updated A-SPEC specifications. So on that note, over to you, Johan.
Thank you very much, George. Okay, so I presume you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Yes, maybe better you didn't do the music, since we don't want any copyright strikes.
That would be on me, but as long as we don't do the lightning bolt, you'll be fine.
Exactly, yes. All right, so ACDC, we've been, it's a complete and proven solution. It's been in the market for more than 10 years. We've got all the standards, so D, R, O, B, S, and W, that's already available. It's totally configurable, so what we have is the stock standard A-SPEC, but there are one or two councils that say in a rural area we don't need all of the attributes or all of the classes, so they've reduced some of that requirements to the developers. We also provide a set of tools to enable consultants to capture the specifications, and I'll show you a little bit about that in a moment. So basically, we've encoded the entire A-SPEC in a tool that you can actually use to capture the data. So it's not only, okay, here's a mechanism where you can actually submit the data, but we actually enable your development community to actually capture that information. We've expanded the validation and conversion, so all of those spatial rules, etc., embedded within the system. And what we've also done is we've added customizable notifications. So if you've added your own specific rules, that's over and above. So maybe some of the more design rules that's not necessarily embedded in A-SPEC, you can actually customize those ones as well. And then also documentation. So it's not only validations, it's a whole project management workflow-based system that you can also manage the documentation that has to be submitted with the project. So typically what we've got with the portal is a mechanism where your both internal or internal asset creators can submit the data. We support MIF files, we submit shape files, or as well as CAD drawings, and that can both be BricsCAD or AutoCAD drawings that can be submitted to the portal. That's validated. It tells you where you've got the errors and issues. Like the previous one, there's certain things that we do correct. Some spatial entities, for example, if you write to a SQL Server spatial database and you've got arcs within the system, then it may cause issues, and we actually will rebalance that. We would actually fix the type of errors. If you've got duplicate vertices on top of each other, we would remove those type of issues within the system to help the improvement process. What you can also then do is all the additional documentation, so CCTV, inspection plans, traffic management plans. You can actually go and define all of those type of documentations that will go with it. It also comes with a complete notification system, so when your developer has or consultant is happy with the drawing, that you get notified. You can then also go and validate it internally. So once it passes validation, it's certified. You then get notified and can then accept or reject. So that whole entire workflow process is managed. Now, within as a asset owner, you can totally determine who gets notified within your organization that you can work with. Now, we can also download either MIP shape or drawing files. So it doesn't matter what is submitted. So you can, for example, submit a MIP file, download a drawing, submit a CAD drawing, download a shape file, etc. So the system caters for that whole data conversion between CAD and GIS environment. So we cater for the entire community. It doesn't really matter what tools you are using. We work with others within the community as well to make sure that the portal can submit any of the classes that is then submitted. And then also provide the ability to convert that to your GIS and asset management. So it's been under development for more than 10 years. There's been more than 14,000 submissions validated. Now, one of the things that we changed from originally is you pay per subdivision, not per submission. What we're trying to do is to make it as easy as possible for you to actually do the validation. And we're also not charging the development community. Typically, the asset owner subscribe to the portal. And we also don't charge per standard. It doesn't matter if it's water or sewer or roads or drain. It's basically per subdivision that you would then be paying for. So totally configurable. Now, it's also rolled out in the US and making some good progress there. We also provide cohesion workshop with the councils and utilities where the members get together, discuss issues that they may have, some new functionality. So one of the fundamental things that we're doing, it is end user driven. What is the functionality that people require to be able to do that, to be able to, what's the new functionality we need, and that's what we add within the system. Now, we're also adding shortly viewer availability. I'll show you something about that in a moment that you can actually see that. So we provide free tools for all the A-SPEC standards, so AutoCAD templates, so drawing templates with all the layers, all the blocks, using attributed blocks, etc. We also provide a set of shape files, MIP files within that. And you can see then there's A-SPEC version 3 or A-SPEC version 5 menus available. And then so there's the tool called the attributor. Now the attributor is where we've embedded the entire A-SPEC configuration within the portal. And you can actually, your development community can use this for free. So it is available for free from the Autodesk App Store as well as from the BricsCAD App Store with the domain values and the block definitions, etc., where all of that is defined. We also have then validation rules in the portal dropdown. So one of the things is if you've got an existing project that is on A-SPEC v3, you can the asset owner can decide when they're going to go with A-SPEC v5. So It can run for all of the new projects with V5 and all the older projects with V3. So we give you total flexibility in that aspect. So we've got all the A-SPEC configurations, so all the asset classes, so all of that is available there. It also then enables, because you've got W&S available, collaborations between the councils and utilities. And it'll shortly, you can already view all of this with you within the data, and that will be incorporated within the portal very soon, that you can actually see the data, look at the A-SPEC attributes, so all of that is available in there. So what we provide is a total workflow solution that from CAD to GIS asset management, as well as into 3D. Now, the attributor, it's been downloaded more than 1,500 times from the Autodesk App Store, and quite a few from the BricsCAD store as well. The full A-SPEC standard is in there with all the drop-down lookups, errors, so you can just go to the App Store, download that. Same with BricsCAD, so there's exactly the same thing in the BricsCAD environment. It gives you the ability to edit multiple simultaneously. You can zoom to all the various objects, tells you where the values are the same or not the same. So it's not only a validation portal, is we enable you to actually capture and manage all of this data. There it is in the BricsCAD App Store. So within notification, you can configure your user groups and assign your workflow notification. We've got drawing, shape, mid-MIFs, and you can convert to shape or mid-MIF on the portal. What we're also adding is you can actually go and configure your asset management load file. So if you say, here's my information that is part of A-SPEC, you can then go and define all the additional attributes that's in your GIS and asset management, and we can then go and when we go and convert that data, it will then also generate your asset management load file automatically from the portal for you. So you can have that process. You can load the data into the GIS and asset management directly from the portal. So we're quite excited about the functionality that enables you to do. So we've got...
Excuse me, Johan. That's
Yep.
a two-minute warning.
Thank you very much. So we've got warnings, custom messages. So all the spatial rule, inside crossing, combined spatial and attributes, the row center lines must be inside the pavement, and the names must match on both of them, for example. Minimum and maximum connections between all the various directionality, so flow direction. We also do check your geometry direction as the invert elevation and rules, but we also check the pipes next to it. So if you look at in this pipes, the downstream invert elevation of the upstream pipe must be higher than the upstream invert elevation of the downstream pipe, if that makes sense. Distance checks, so all of that available. So that's not all that we do. So, you can go from the L submission, the validation, all the workflows to the GIS, also to the digital twin. So for example, water, sewer, roads, drainage, so the drawing that you can then go and actually submit to the digital twin Victoria that we've got there, and you can then see that in 3D. Without stealing anybody's thunder, I'll just go into, okay, here we've got digital twin Victoria, so with the cadastral loaded. So I'll just go and take, so this is the data that we've generated from the portal in CZML, and let's make the terrain see-through. So what that will actually do is, if we look at this, our upstream invert elevation, our downstream invert elevation, if we look at this, all the attributes for the pit from A-SPEC, What we've also then loaded is the buildings as well as the parcel information. So this is a ASCON drawing directly from the portal, and you can then actually go and view this data in 3D in the digital twin. So we're quite interested to look at the digital twin presentation. So yes, we provide regular webinars. If you want to go to the Open Spatial website, there's our events news. There's a link to that in the portal. And so we've got our OSIF Open Spatial User Forum in end of October, and we will have an extensive section on ACDC that you all invited to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johan, for another excellent presentation. Really appreciate the time and effort that you and everyone else has gone into in presenting today. So you'll see that the poll has jumped up into your chat. Please don't hesitate to complete that. All right, I'll just grab the screen back again. Okay, so moving on and getting back into the world of AI, I'd like to introduce Bradley Rassmussen from Sizztech. So Bradley is an IT professional with more than 30 years of experience in the field. For the past 15 years, he's dedicated his expertise to local governments and utilities. Bradley is highly passionate, which we'll find out about very shortly, about resolving urban design and growth issues through the use of big data and artificial intelligence. And he has developed a wealth of knowledge in predicting the future growth of cities, having successfully modelled the urban expansion of more than 15 Australian local government areas, including the notable Brisbane City Council and the City of Gold Coast, the two largest local government areas in the Southern Hemisphere. The urban planning profession is expected to undergo a major shift with the rise of artificial intelligence and machine learning. These technologies can potentially replace various tasks performed by urban planners, including determining a property's development potential. Bradley will discuss the challenges of creating a data-driven machine learning system to perform this task. He will explore a different approach, blending the expert knowledge of an urban planner with AI technology. I love the human element. Welcome, Bradley. Good to see you again. I look forward to your presentation and hand the screen over to you.
Thank you, George. I'll just do presenting teams. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
No, can't see anything yet, Bradley. Depends which screen you're sharing.
Let me just get back here. All right, how's that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Are we away? All right. Thank you. So can everyone see my screen?
We can see it, not in presentation mode though.
No. All right.
Yep.
Okay.
Lovely.
Yes, thanks, George. So I'm Bradley Rassmussen, and I'm the CEO of Sizztech. And as George says, we like to say we predict the future of cities. So we developed a product called Forecast, which looks out 10, 20 years and tries to determine where urban growth will occur within our council area. And our customers are typically local governments and utilities who obviously have to look out into the future and work out, where they're going to build that next water reservoir or what 2-lane road's got to go to a 4-lane road. And what we're going to look at today is actually combining, I guess, AI with urban planning. So to model urban growth, it's quite a complex process. It requires many inputs, and there's many processes to those inputs. This is sort of an example here on the side here. I'm not going to go into, I guess, that today. That's another presentation. But the core requirement of these systems is we sort of want to determine a method to determine what we call the development propensity of properties, like have the model select a property and put a propensity on it to be developed. And I guess it aligns to predicting the occurrence of development applications or development permits, because every time you want to do a development, you have to put a permit or an application in for that development to occur and to get approved by the local government. So it's sort of obvious that you should probably use those DA permits. You could use those DA applications and permits as an input into a machine learning model, and that could actually assist you with determining propensity. However, there are some limitations, I guess, to using this sort of data set. So first of all, you have a very uneven mix of residential DA permits to non-residential permits. So typically we see around 70 to 85% of the permits are all about residential development, and the other 20 to 25% are non-residential development. So non-residential development, talking about things like shopping centres, cafes, industrial, that's that type of development. Also, DAs and permits only represent a really small proportion of the properties that can be developed. So typically this is around 5 to 10% of all developable properties. So it's only quite a small representation. And the other issue we have is normally this data set doesn't actually include the DAs and permits that were refused. And so, as you know, well, as other people have spoke about on today even, it's really important for the AI to have exposure to not only like the stuff that got approved, but also the stuff that got rejected, because it needs to sort of see both sides of that data so it can understand what is good and what is bad when it's doing its learning. And if we actually take do a bit more deep dive in the analysis of development applications and permits, what we sort of see in the middle, this sort of good representation of the data sets here. So what I have here is on the left is the residential dwelling. So these are sort of a dwelling count with a maximum range and how many counts there are. And on the other graph is actually gross floor area. So gross floor area is basically your building footprint by the number of floors. So that's typically how we describe non-residential development. And you see, like in the middle here, it's pretty good representative data. But what we also see up the top here is this large skewing effect that occurs. So predominantly, most of your approvals for residential are one or two dwellings. So this really sort of skews the data in that respect. Same on the GFA side, on the non-res side. Again, it's sort of developments that are less than 500 metres GFA or less. The other thing we also have is these outliers down the bottom here. So you've got some applications that have really high levels of apartments being delivered, i.e. big multi-storey development residential complexes, or on the GFA side, it could be things like big industrial sheds, those sort of things. And they actually they actually skew the data as well. So it's really hard for an AI engine to try to make sense of this sort of data. And even though I did say that the middle data set is quite representative, with the non-residential data set, we have really low numbers of actual DAs and permits available in that set. So, this is like 60 or less, so it's in the tens. Really, for AI, you really want things in the hundreds or in the thousands is a lot better for it to sort of learn off of and be able to inference off of. So given that the DA permits sort of have these sort of limitations of machine language, can we utilise an urban planner's knowledge to assist with developing this propensity? And we sort of can. There's another AI technology around, or machine learning technology around, called Bayesian network models. So these are probabilistic graphical models that have a clear schema. So it's very easy for a urban planner and for a layperson to sort of understand what's going on with these models. And they're commonly used for land use scenario modelling. And it actually lets us codify an urban planner's knowledge of the factors that influence development. Things like, distance to water and sewer, margin, things like the development, parcel development, properties, so frontage, site cover, all those sort of things that an urban planner thinks would make a good or even would prohibit a property being developed. They can sort of describe these, we can codify this and put this into one of these Bayesian network models. So, this is an example of a residential Bayesian net model, and then we can utilise this Bayesian model to actually describe a propensity for the property to develop. However, when we do analysis of these BN models and how they distribute the actual propensity distribution, you see that urban planners tend to be very good at identifying properties that have very good propensity, and they're also pretty good at identifying properties that have poor propensity, but not so good about identifying stuff that's in the middle. Like, okay, we've got good or bad, but what is, how can we actually predict better what's going to happen in the actual middle, in that sort of middle sort of development situation. So given these shortcomings, could we use machine learning to assist us with determining, I guess, a better propensity for that midsection distribution? And, what if we actually combine both that BN data set with the DA and permits? What type of result would that give us? And how would that look like? So if we start with our model, what we do is actually feed in all the properties with good propensity, with great propensity. We put in all the DAs and permits as well. And we also then feed in the properties with that poor propensity. So the model's actually getting a good look at what's good, what's bad, and what's sort of in between, if you know what I mean. And then we also feed in not only those BN node data points, but we also take in another 30 data points. So humans typically, can only sort of deal with, 5, 7 sort of items. It's really hard for a human mind to sort of go beyond, really complex, large data sets. But obviously these models can. So we actually feed a lot more data points in there, in addition to what they actually describe in the actual Bayesian network itself. And the question is, we feed all this in here, can it actually influence a realistic propensity?
Excuse me, Brad, that'll be a 2-minute warning.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what we do is we randomly remove all those, we randomly remove like 30% of those DA permits from the model. So we call these test DAs. And then what we want to do is have the model try and actually predict those test DAs that we removed. And for that to occur, obviously the property must actually be close or near to the test DA, and it must also be predicting what is. It also has to be consistent in its prediction. So if the DA was residential, then the model also must be predicting residential. And it can't obviously use the property that was trained on, and it must be obviously needs to be developable, and and it must be within a certain distance of the removed test DA. So what we mean by that is, this is an example. So we have the test DA here, and we've got like a 100-metre buffer around that. So if the model predicted developing that corner lot, we would actually consider that's a win. Yes, it didn't actually get the test DA, but was close enough to it, providing that it was the same type of land use, i.e. being, you know, it kind of predicted, say, a childcare centre when the DA was for a duplex, say. So let's see how all that goes. So on the actual non-res side of things, you'll see with the ML at say at 100 metres out at 2021. So we're looking at like 10 years. So we want to go in 10 years' time. You know, if we go at 10 years, how does the model actually go at predicting those sort of things using ML and just using the standard BN? So you can sort of see at 2031, we're looking at like almost like 75% prediction rate. Whereas we've just used the Bayesian network only, we're looking at about a 62% prediction rate. And so, you know, you see the actual machine learning is actually, you know, significantly increasing our prediction there. And with residential, sort of same again, not quite as, you know, quite as good as what the non-res was, but still in front. So at 2031, we're looking at 86% prediction rate versus an 82%. But what we also see though, at 2021, the actual model is a lot better at actually identifying lots for development than what the BN is. So it's sort of running at about 78%, whereas the BN is running at about 70%. So what we can sort of conclude from all that is that we can actually codify that urban planner's knowledge, and we can put that into Bayesian networks, and actually even just doing that alone actually produces a good predictive performance for models. But obviously, if we actually take that Bayesian network model from the urban planner and we combine that with machine learning, we can actually boost that by 10 to 15%. And that's really good for non-residential development potentials. Like, they are typically harder to predict, and by using ML, we're getting a lot better result. Thank you.
Glad, that was terrific. You know, I'm now seeing the vital importance of data, and as Andrew said before in his presentation, data is king. But this is a question for both yourself and Andrew. It's great that you've got this historical data, but what's been your experience about the quality of the data that you've needed to input for your machine learning to have an impact?
Our experience is that we still have to do a lot of cleansing and filtering. Like, it's still quite poor in lots of respects. I guess especially around the more non-residential side of things, where we're trying to determine GFA. So that's obviously, you know, footprint by building height. So you're looking at LiDAR, that type of information to try and work that out. So yeah, we still have to do a lot of manual cleansing to try and, I guess, get it at a fairly good state to feed into the model, because as everyone knows, it's garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, my sense of it is it's going to take some time before we can get to some sort of harmonized elements of data creation and collection. Have you got in terms of cost, have you got a sense of the percentage that's spent on data cleansing versus what it actually takes to do the analysis?
Look, it's possibly at the moment, it's, you know, definitely it's, you know, good 60-70%, I guess, goes in data cleansing at, you know, formatting at the moment. Obviously, it's kind of a bit of a once-off cost. Like, once you sort of get it done, then it's an incremental cost to maintain that, because essentially you're just looking for then, you know, new developments coming along. But yeah, it is typically the big upfront cost when you first put together one of these models.
Yeah, absolutely. Can totally understand that. So my last question for you. So from the work that you've done, are you now feeding back to the different agencies about the diligence that they need to place on making sure that the data they're actually collecting is clean?
Yes, yes and no. I guess the challenge we have is, we are typically dealing with, the strategic planning side of the organisation, whereas the GIS and DA and that side is another area. So it's there is some challenges, I guess, in having that areas, those other areas to collect, see the value of actually collecting good data at that
Oh, you're just dropping out there, your bandwidth. You were just dropping out with your bandwidth there, Brad. But yes, welcome to my world about who you're dealing with, and
at that point.
Yes, you may want to turn want to turn your camera off, but well, maybe there's an opportunity for A-SPEC. Who knows? I'll just leave that there.
Look, I certainly think there is.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm sure you and I will have further conversations. But again, thank you for an excellent presentation and another viewpoint about the importance of AI in our decision making. Okay, so moving on to our next presenter, and it's my pleasure to introduce the Director of Digital Twin Victoria, Carys Evans. Carys is leading one of the most innovative digital programs underway in the Victorian government. The Digital Twin Victoria program is and correct me if I'm wrong here, Carys, but it's a record $37.4 million investment by the Victorian government in digital twin technology, data science, and spatial innovation. DTV is democratising access to rich spatial data and enabling Victorians to visualise and model places virtually before investment hits the ground. Carys will be speaking with us on all things digital twin, and we also welcome Alena Moison, also from Digital Twin Victoria, who will provide us with a demonstration of the Digital Twin Victoria platform in action. So looking forward to that. Over to you, Carys, and welcome.
Well, the mute button's moving a bit slowly there, but thank you so much, George. And thanks everyone for having us. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here. So yeah, as George said, so my name's Carys Evans, and I have Alena Moison, so my Principal of Technology and Strategy here, to give us a bit of a demo of the DTV platform, because there's nothing like, you don't want to just see a whole lot of slides. It's great to have a bit of a demonstration, live demonstration. It's always a bit risky, especially with this sort of rain and storm events, but we're going to give it a go. So yeah, thank you very much for having us again. But before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and the lands on which we're meeting today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Wherever you are on Aboriginal land, land that has and always will be Aboriginal land. And I'm on the Wurundjeri country, and I pay my respects to the peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people here today. So today I want to take you through a bit of our Digital Twin Victoria story and our experience in working with different partners from across government. But back in time, so back in 2019, so where we started, I had just actually returned from parental leave, and I was in an acting director gig at the time because DTV didn't exist, remember? And I was really excited to be given the opportunity to lead the Victorian government and my first soiree into digital twin in Fisherman's Bend. So for those of you who may not be from Victoria or Melbourne, it was at the time Australia's largest urban renewal project, and it's right in the heart of Melbourne. So you can see it's that little pocket of land in the front of the camera there. And in that project, we worked with 20-odd organisations from across government and private sector, and we managed to bring together over 1,000 data sets. And look, from then on, we were sold. So on the opportunity of digital twin and the technology to change the way that we plan and manage our built natural and built environment. So this experience also helped to shape the two underpinning principles of our approach to DTV, or Digital Twin Victoria. So first, ensuring our customers weren't intimidated by the technology. So making sure that it wasn't just the arena of technical specialists. In fact, when we built the DTV platform, we built it with non-technical users in mind. So we wanted to democratize access to the data there. We wanted to connect with an ecosystem of tools for more technical users. So how technical users were often getting the data, but it wasn't getting to those who really had to make the ultimate decisions. So how do we break down that wall and make it easier? Secondly, we think that it's absolutely the most powerful when you build these sort of opportunities with collaboration in mind. So we've actively co-designed with prospective users across local and state government, other jurisdictions, and even the private sector. So we had a beta tester program, and we are constantly engaging and talking to our users and customers around their experience and trying to build where they see the value and where there is that opportunity and that lived experience. Because and ultimately, if you get this input early, you get a better product, right? So it helps you leverage each other's work where possible as well. And ultimately, you get kind of to the end point and a better product faster. So for our platform, we sort of had the mantra of build it together, and sort of we collaborated as much as we possibly could on the way. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Now, I think this is a fairly digitally savvy audience, but I do want to be clear what I mean when I talk about digital twin, because seriously, if you ask 10 people, you will get 10 different answers. So when I'm talking about digital twin, I'm talking about a digital representation of reality located in three-dimensional space and time. And they can come in so many different shapes and sizes. So from machinery, parts, human bodies, physical assets like trains or even buildings, or even digital twins of whole local areas. And in our case, we're talking about a digital twin of the entire state of Victoria. So think of it like virtual Lego or SimCity. I don't know how many of you might have played that growing up. I certainly did. Minecraft, if you've got young kids, you know, so that idea of having a space where you can trial and build scenarios, where you can bring 2D, 3D and live data sets together in the one place, which means you can ask questions that you couldn't easily consider before. And the Digital Twin Victoria platform, so the DTV platform, has gone from strength to strength really since we launched back in August last year. In that first year of operation, we've had over 27,000 unique users across over 60,000 sessions. So a lot of sessions, a lot of people getting in there and leveraging the platform, and steadily increasing statistics in that respect as well. So happy to say the number of our users is increasing month on month. We're also noticing that the traffic and the use of the platform is Monday to Friday in the business hours. So people are using the platform in their work lives. They're using it to answer practical work-related questions is what we'd infer from that. And actually, they're on it for quite a long time. So 25% of them are on it for more than 10 minutes. And in fact, 10% of our users are on the platform for more than 20 minutes. So we're getting a really good picture of where they're finding value and how they're leveraging it in across the community. And it's also put like these data sets, these incredibly complex and large data sets into people's hands in a way that they wouldn't have been able to before. So they can start thinking about how to design new workflows and how to use 3D data. So there's over 12,500 square kilometres of 3D photo meshes. So that's 3D imagery across Melbourne and regional towns like Echuca and Shepparton, Wangaratta, and about a dozen other towns and precincts across the state. And then we've also incorporated the new 3D buildings product, which was released at the start of this year. So over 4 million models, three-dimensional models of the built environment across the state available, like at the click of a button, click into the platform and have a look. And we're also building it all, importantly, on the one of the highest highest resolution statewide terrain models that exists for Victoria. So we're leveraging historical elevation data from tens of millions of dollars of investment by government over time, and using that to create a consistent statewide terrain model as high quality as we possibly can. And as I mentioned, we're engaging like as a basis of the way that we're working. So it's that engagement across state, local and federal governments is absolutely crucial to the way that we're delivering. We're partnering deeply in the development of our products, but also then the decisions that we're making around the next data sets and integrations that we might undertake. Now, I want to deep dive a little bit just quickly into sort of 3 stories, just to kind of give you a bit of a sense of the sort of experiences that we've had with customers since we launched last year. And they kind of bridge the whole spectrum from organisations that are right at the beginning of their digital journey. And I'm sure you guys are experienced with dealing with this full spectrum as well, plenty of you, right the way through to an organisation that's actually looking to leverage work it had already been doing in the digital space and the visualisation space. So first up, a state government agency responsible for managing thousands of public assets spread across the state. When we met with them, they had some data, so they did have some digital data, but very limited digital capability in their team. And the main way they accessed their assets was using a spreadsheet. It probably sounds quite familiar to you guys, but it's, as you know, it's more common than you think. It's easy to use, it doesn't require licensing, no one needs a training course to get at it. So they reached out to us soon after we launched, so late last year, interested in kind of seeing how they might be able to leverage the platform. And in the meeting, we kind of had that nail-biting moment where they said, oh, well, that's right, you can drag and drop data. Let's give it a go with our spreadsheet. It's still, they can drag and drop, so you can do that in the DTV platform. You can drag and drop your own data sets, keeping them still securely on your own servers. It does not take a copy of the data. It federates data sets from wherever they're appropriately kept and securely managed by their custodians. But you can see it in the twin, in the context of other data sets. So they did this live in the meeting. And I'll be honest, I was a bit nervous, but it worked perfectly. So they could immediately see the location of all their assets in the context of the 4,000 other data sets already available in the DTV platform. They could see information on how accessible the locations might be to public and private transport. They could understand the proximity to government services, that sort of thing. So they could immediately contextualise the assets that they had available. And that was such an important shift for them, just for the day-to-day management of their teams when they're looking at understanding a site, understanding the challenges and opportunities that might be faced at that location, and then communicating that up to the senior decision makers. Because as you know, like a picture tells 1,000 words. It's so much better than a table on a giant report sometimes when you're trying to communicate to decision makers in that context. But it really came into its own. So that this integration came into its own really during the floods last year, when the asset owner was trying to understand what the impacts might be. And they literally were holding a hard copy 100-page report up to the screen to try and establish whether their assets were potentially threatened under the flood warnings that were being released at the time. We were happily, able to connect to a visualisation, a secure visualisation of the flood extents, which meant that they no longer had to hold something up against the screen. They could actually see immediately and scan through their assets and see where the risk was potentially going to occur and how the impact was changing over time. So what's next for them? Well, now they're wanting to explore how they can leverage some of the spatial analytics and the sort of 3D aspects of the platform to support some of their future planning. They want tools to help them look at key characteristics of different locations, like quickly and easily, and report on them. So planning overlays, population dynamics provided by the ABS, those sorts of things. So they want to develop those sort of spatial analytics tools with us so that they can better understand and plan looking forward. Next, so my second example is one of 2 regional councils, so City of Geelong and our Rural City Council. So they're both helping to create a blueprint for how DTV can fast track a smart city vision in regional Victoria. And they've both shown really strategic leadership in this space. They have digital data and small dedicated spatial teams. And both of them have really faced that challenge of how do we share the data with those that need it, both internal decision makers and their communities. And with such small teams and so many broad uses, it can be really difficult for them to meet demands. So in Geelong's case, they actually integrated the Geelong Data Exchange into the DTV platform. That enables them to support visualisation and develop learning modules for their staff and for the community to build capacity and help them better access and understand the data that might be available to them. For Ararat, they're building a hands-on demonstration lab in collaboration with us and Federation University that help them to share the data they're collecting directly with their communities. So I think they're calling it the Fab Lab. So building that in Ararat itself. And where to next? So City of Geelong is doing some really exciting work looking at increasing engagement and exploring the use of generative AI and computer vision and uplifting the resolution of some of their digital building models across the local government area. Whereas in Ararat, they're actually setting up a real-time weather monitoring network that'll help farmers to better predict the impact of weather patterns and support early detection of emergency events across the region. So tapping in to some of those live streaming weather gauges and stream level gauges. Lastly, the story of a major state government program, so Connecting Victoria, some of you may be aware of. So they are sort of at the more mature end of the scale. So they already had plenty of digital data. So they already understood why it was important, and they even had a system to view it on and a team who wanted to use it, right? But the system was not as reliable as they might have wanted, fairly expensive, and they couldn't afford to continue to build the functionality they needed to give them the data insights to actually make the decisions they needed. So first up, we provided them with a reliable, secure platform and supported the data integration so they had access to the data that their teams needed on a day-to-day basis. Then we developed new tools with them, so a line of sight tool and a spatial search tool so that they could identify the best sites to situate new 5G towers. So without a 3D platform like DTV, they would have been back to interpreting 2D topographic maps and trying to write reports and articulate the benefits and pros and cons of different sites. But where to next with these guys? So the biggest thing they, and actually others have been calling on from us, is the ability to self-serve. So actually, we've been working really hard on this piece of work, and from November this year, we'll be enabling 3 things. So firstly, the ability to create your own area within the DTV platform, so teams can tailor their experiences and better understand the use of data and tools. Secondly, enabling our users to manage the data themselves, and who can access it, so they don't have to wait for our team to do all that sort of management for them. And then finally, improving the discoverability of the data itself. So enhancing the data and location search functionality so that they can be more responsive to the location-based requests. So what? So here are the takeaways from me. So digital twins can support faster, better decisions, supporting digital tools and workflows like the ArchiStar Comply tool we released a few weeks ago in collaboration with RegTech startup ArchiStar. I haven't even had a chance to talk about that one. It tells you how much is going on.
Excuse me, Carys, that's 2 minutes.
Yep, that's fine. Thanks, Kelly. I'm almost done, and then I'll hand to Alena. They can also help, my last slide, I promise. They can also help to democratise access to data, getting data and insights easily into the hands of decision makers without the need for a licence or a computer science degree. And then finally, they can improve policy responses and drive better outcomes, providing richer and more meaningful design and engagement with communities and amongst decision makers themselves. And finally, supporting visualization, analytics and simulation. So enabling you to explore, plan and model digitally before investment hits the ground. Thank you. I'm going to hand you over now to the fun part, to Alena Moison, to give us a live demonstration of the DTV platform. Thanks all.
Thanks, Carys. And you can see the platform? I'm sharing okay?
Yep.
Excellent. All right. Great. Well, let's get into it. So this is the DTV platform. It's being hosted by Data61 in CSIRO, obviously Australia's National Science Institute, and it is based on cesium technologies as well. So it has this, world cesium kind of underlaying technology here. And when you go into the platform, just to note that there is a lot of help that's available. If you click on the help button and go into the DTV website, we've got videos on all the tools and functionalities within the platform, and there's also text-based user guides and other things there. I'll also mention that we have regularly recurring user sessions, user drop-in sessions every couple of months, and we also kicked off our first of a series of quarterly Victorian government-wide user sessions, training sessions. We had our first one, I think it was last month in August. Now I guess we're in October, but in August, and we actually had over 300 participants come for 3 hours of training on the platform. And I could say that we probably could have gone all day. So there's a lot of features and functions I may not touch on, but briefly in this session, but good to know that you can come to these other sessions and get more in-depth experiences. So to get into the data catalog is accessed by this Explore Map Data button here. And you'll see that there's quite a bit here in the catalog under different categories. I won't go through all of them, but I'll touch on a few briefly. The VicMap 3D buildings, which Carys mentioned, has that access to those 4 million data models across the state of the built environment. And with that single button right there, I'm loading them all in. I'm going to just zoom in to Melbourne City Centre, and we can start loading those models in and seeing what those look like. Now, these models are generated by remotely sensed methods. So we use aerial imagery and we use LiDAR data and combine those to create these extruded built form models, and they're just coming in now. This is actually over Flinders Street Station here, and obviously Fed Square over here. So as they come in, you'll see that they get to be quite detailed. Here you can see the roof line, for example, of Flinders Street Station. Now, what's great about the VicMap 3D buildings model is that it's future-proofing the fact that we have multiple representations of buildings, right? So we have this model that's built from aerial imagery and elevation data, but we may also have a planning approvals document. We may have the as-built models. We have maybe multiple of these versions of representations of this building, and we want to be able to know when we have a higher level of detail or a different type of representation for this building, to be able to understand, do we have it in government? Is there an accessible version? And then this isn't the full data model because this is obviously open to the public, but then to also identify who has it. So we're not trying to capture everything here, but be able to give pointers to people who need those other different representations, those other BIMs and other forms of documentation about the built form. So really easy to navigate in 3D in this platform, especially if you are used to navigating in a 3D environment, perhaps in a gaming engine. So some other things that I'm going to remove these just by clicking on this Remove All button. Unfortunately, take them all away and show you a different 3D representation that we have, which is photo mesh data. Now, a great one that we have is actually Cheltenham 3D photo mesh. This was created to support the suburban rail loop and the works that were happening there in Cheltenham. So a 3D photo mesh is actually a little bit more immersive because it actually has that that imagery quality to it. It's not just those gray models that I showed you with the VicMap 3D buildings, but actually has all of the rich context of the photography added to the model. Again, that will just come into my machine. I've just upgraded my internet connection, and I must say it's running pretty smoothly at the moment, noting that these are really massive data sets. They are complex, difficult data sets for most people to work with, even GIS specialists. So what we've done in DTV is sort of taken all that burden on, manage that complexity and that difficulty for everyone so that you can just easily get access to it in a web-based platform. You don't need any software, you don't need any special skills. So this is the Cheltenham 3D photo mesh. As I said, it's just the neighborhood and used for those planning and design purposes. But one of the functions we have in DTV is this pedestrian mode, where I can drop a person there on the street. And because of the level of detail that we went to with this photo mesh, we actually incorporated ground level imagery as well. And what that means is that I can navigate and actually look in the windows essentially of some of these buildings and really get a context for what that ground level looks like. So of special interest to you, I'm sure, will be the ability to also then add in other types of 3D models like BIMs. So we can have photo meshes, we can have 3D models, and we can have BIMs all representing that same built form, that same built environment. I'm going to show you the Sunbury train station BIM that we have in the platform at the moment. Make sure that's set correctly. And again, that's just coming in here. So the idea here is that, again, I'm not a digital engineering expert. BIMs are a fairly foreign concept to me, and I don't have the software that would natively be able to deal with a lot of them. But here I'm able to actually easily access a BIM. I can query it, I can click on it, and I can see the information, the attribution, the rich attribution that comes out of that BIM, and start to understand the value of it. So how could I use it in my own business processes? How could I use it to improve what I'm doing? For those, and that's really, I think, where DTV is shining, is being able to bring in a wider audience to some of these really complex but highly valuable data sets, so that we can lift that digital capability and that knowledge and experience of these kinds of data products. So that's the Sunbury train station. You can do all the same things with it. You can drop in a little person if you want to. You can also do measurements on this. So I can do line measurements. I can also do line of sight with that very easily here within the platform. How many minutes do I have left? I think I had only a few to show things, but
yeah, you've got about 4 minutes till completion.
Oh, great. I'm sure I can fill that with lots of new things. So the other thing that we have in DTV is that we have that capability of bringing in real-time data, sensor data, and I'll show you an example of that right now from our colleagues over in Transport. They publish an API for the trains, the metro trains, and the locations of those trains, and we've integrated that into DTV. What we've done here is we've got the live locations of the trains here in Melbourne, and they're coloured by the different line that they represent. So this blue one is the Cranbourne line, and you can click on it and get all the information that's coming in from that API. Some of it's more meaningful than others, but yeah, really great to be able to have and show that live data coming through to start to understand, again, what can we do with it? How is the best way to visualize this information and actually build it into decision making and processes? So every few seconds, you'll see that the data is updated and the little squares jump around.
That's 2 minutes, Alena.
Thank you. That's great. All right, final thing then that I will show you is, as Carys mentioned, we have that ability to show, sort of what might be, so prospective building forms before they're actually, before we actually start work to develop them, and we can use that to engage with the community in a much better, much different way. And an example of that is we have the Sunshine Master Plan reference model that we've brought into the platform. And I'll show that here in a second. So you may all be very well aware that in the west of Melbourne, in Sunshine, there's a huge amount of work going on to integrate this as a real major transport hub in the west, and potentially in future bring in things like the suburban rail loop and maybe even the Melbourne Airport Rail, if that ever is actually comes to fruition. But as part of that work, they're also looking at, well, what does the land around that station need to be able to accommodate? So this is the master plan reference model that we've spec'd out. And what I'll do is what's really good is to show what the area looks like now versus what they are projecting it may look like in future when we've got a more dense commercial and residential precinct around that station. So if I bring in the big map buildings, and those will just start to load up there in a moment. And what we like to do is actually show that you can actually turn this Sunshine Station reference model on and off to be able to see what the change looks like in that community, especially in 3D as these models come in. They're being a bit flaky at the moment, but you can easily sort of turn that on and off and then understand what that looks like. So you can see there's a huge new bus interchange here, replacing this parking lot next to the train station, and even with the imagery, you can see that really in the neighborhood it's quite post 50s sort of residential community, and the change that will come about in this area when this is all in place is a much denser urban center around that station. So yeah, being able to show and then engage with the community about what these changes really are going to mean in their communities is great to do in the platform. All right, I'll stop there and maybe open up for any questions.
Alena and Carys, that was fabulous. It's really great to see what the opportunities are. Carys, you left me with Fab Lab, so it's stuck in my head now. And I feel after all these, especially yours, but I feel like a kid in a lolly shop where anything is possible. It's it's definitely a tinkerer's paradise that you've created, and we're only going to be stopped by our imagination. Is what I think is where we're at, and all of the presentations today have really proven that technology is definitely not the barrier that was once there for us all those years ago. So if there are any questions, please pop them into the chat, and we'll cover them off.
I just wanted to make a comment. Sorry, George. Gee, that live train data would have been great yesterday when I'm standing at the train station and where's my train? They're not telling me anything, and it's obviously been backed up somewhere. So that blew me away. That was amazing. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. Okay, so again, here's the I saw Carys put in a link into the chat if you want to find out more about Digital Twin Victoria. But yes, the mind boggles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said that, moving into the wrap up.
Excuse me, George. There's
a question.
Just a question in the chat.
Will there be a connection to Google Maps for traffic?
Ooh, good question.
Interesting question. We haven't. Yeah, Alena, what do you? Well, I mean, nothing's impossible, right? I mean, if they're happy to share with us and integrate, then I'm not going to say things aren't possible. And if we have customers who need the functionality. But it's an interesting one. I don't know if does Google allow other applications to integrate with their traffic stream?
I think they do.
I mean, I'd love that.
I'm not sure if they would be. Yeah, we'll look into it. Look into it and check out the licensing conditions. Government.
Yeah, that'll be the truth.
Yeah, it might. Yeah, it may be an issue there, but otherwise we'll have a look at it.
Yeah, but definitely, that sort of thing. Those sort of opportunities are brilliant. Sorry, George.
I was just going to say, it might need to be a bit of argy-bargy. They're very. I'll be a bit tongue-in-cheek and say they're very good at taking, but I haven't seen them giving.
That's why I was wondering whether it was.
We won't go down that path, but plenty of goodwill there. So, yeah, great question, Andrej. Thank you for that. So 7 weeks has been a lot of work that's gone into today, and firstly I want to thank everybody that's presented today, the time and effort that you've taken. I want to acknowledge all the people who have come along today, because you've also participated in this to make today a really special day, and I sincerely mean that. And looking over the series, and in particular today, what we've endeavoured to do is to deliver to you what's called the 4 pillars of industry: academia, research, public and private. And I think we succeeded in doing that today. And the broad cross-section of the application of technology that influences us on a day-to-day level, personally and professionally, was really put on show today. So on to the wrap-up. On the screen, I've got two QR codes, one for the YouTube channel where you can access the video recordings from the forums going back to 2020. So if you want to have a look there, and also GISA on LinkedIn. Now, one of the things that I had a look at was in 2022, we also ran a series of polls. So I had a look at some of the things that we said that we would do. And also it comes back from what you said. So checklists. There was a request for checklists going forward. Now that's available on our website through, and there's no login needed. You can go onto the A-SPEC website and search for checklist, asset and asset data handover checklist, and you can pull that document down. Full documents. What we talked about there was we were creating documents just showing the changes versus the full document, which shows is the whole specification. The request was just provide full documents, and now that's what we do. Phase in time requested of 6 months. We missed that by 1 month. The drafts were placed on the website in April of this year for all to start adopting. The new versions were published in September. I think we did a pretty good job of that. So what does the future hold? So these are all of the things that we're looking at, and there's quite a lot that's on our development plan. We haven't actually got it all mapped out as yet, but some of the things that we're looking at is, well, how can we apply A-SPEC in other areas outside of local government? Because if a road is a road and a building's a building, then what are the learnings that can be shared across the different sectors? A-SPEC. We talked about this in the forums, that we're now looking at developing our next specification, which is A-SPEC. And Philip Nelson, this is all your fault, calling it the X files. So what we're looking at is, what are asset classes that don't logically fit in or naturally fit into the existing specifications? And what I've got on there is a fuel tank, which is basically a combustible liquid. So we are creating combustible liquid asset class, or containers for combustible liquids, as part of A-SPEC, and our cohort of interns are working on that. And so just watch this space. The instruction that we've given them is to exclude mobile containers, but include transportable containers. We're continuing to create guidance notes. So for an example, we talked about compounds, and this was one of the case studies that we talked about. How do we go from this kind of drawing to an A-SPEC compliant set of data? So the guidance notes will be delivered, will be developed around that, including, so here's another example of a frequently asked question. So we're gathering a lot of data. Now it's about how do we feed that back to everybody else so that we can learn from some of the engagement that we've been having. Leveraging 3D. If you go onto our YouTube channel, there's a video clip there with a bridge. This will talk more about how we take schedules out of a Revit environment, put them into another database environment. So just imagine that duct of information could actually be extracted as a schedule put into the asset management system, or even better still, inject that kind of level of detail into a digital twin platform, and you've got a whole other scenario. So Gabby is working on this in the background. We've talked about entity attribute relationship models. Really important to see how the links are between tables, between different attributes. You know, we talk about primary keys, foreign keys. Whilst we didn't poll this, we asked the question, and there's a lot of interest in us creating these kind of diagrams for each of our specs. So finally, I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes. So William Edwards Deming, quite an esteemed person. So has been universally acclaimed as one of the founding fathers of total quality management, if not the founding father. An interesting fact that I discovered is that the revolution in Japanese manufacturing management that led to the economic miracle of the 70s and 80s has been largely or attributed to Deming. So it's amazing what you find just out of looking at a particular quote. Again, I want to acknowledge, or I do acknowledge, everybody that attended today as a presenter or a participant. Your contributions have been fabulous. I will be on here for another 10 minutes. We've now gone past our allocated time of 1 p.m. I apologise for taking an extra 2 minutes. Thank you again. Look forward to business as usual and looking at what we can do next year. And as we say goodbye, here's the final poll. So thank you again. Cheerio, everyone. Have a fabulous afternoon.